Hey friends, I'm so excited to share with you today. We have a very, very special guest, Michelle Grosser from the Calm Mom podcast is joining us. Michelle is an attorney, a pastor, a nervous system expert, certified master life coach, and as I said, the host of the Calm Mom podcast. Through somatic and neuroscience-based modalities, she coaches women through discovering what's beneath their triggers and emotions so that they can begin their healing journey and find peace in the present. Michelle and her husband Jeff have two daughters and they live in Miami, Florida. And you guys, this conversation was so blessed. It just is going to give you so many practical, simple, tactical solutions to just learn how to bring your nervous system into a more regulated state and just have a healthier nervous system so that you can approach life in a little bit more calm manner. It really truly helps just reduce stress and change how we respond to our families and various circumstances. So I do not want to delay this conversation any further, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Michelle as much as I did. Welcome to the Grace-Filled Leader Podcast. Do you want better work-life balance? Do you get stuck in patterns of perfectionism and people-pleasing? Have you always been an overachiever but never really felt good enough, no matter how much outward success you achieve? Do you want more time for the things that matter most? Well, you are in the right place. Here on the Grace-Filled Leader Podcast, we focus on spirit-driven success and share the secrets to having better work-life balance as a busy woman in leadership. Here you will learn how to set boundaries like a boss, find peace of mind, and reclaim your time for the things that matter most. Hi, I'm Tanya, a wife, mom, leader, and certified Christian life coach. For most of my life, I tried to find worthiness through achievement. I spent decades people-pleasing and pouring myself into my work. I was looking for my value through the approval of others. This led me to feel burned out, empty, and exhausted. I had no time or energy for myself or my family. I realized that I was wasting time and energy looking for validation in all the wrong places. But my life changed when I finally surrendered and God showed me a different way. It is my mission to help you start living the abundant life God has for you. If you're ready to become fueled by grace and find freedom from people-pleasing, if you're ready to multiply your time and impact as a Christian woman in leadership, this podcast is for you. Roll up your sleeves, sister friends. It's time to get after it. Michelle, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you today.
Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I listen to your show all the time and I kind of geek out on it because I'm a physical therapist by background. So the brain and neural pathways and all of that is, I tie it kind of to my physical therapy realm, like with rehab of stroke patients and all of that. And I love how you really use kind of that work and the brain to work with people on essentially coping,
Yes.
thriving in life instead of surviving and barely coping. But for those of my listeners that aren't familiar with you, who you are and what you do, can you just introduce yourself, what you do, who you serve?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Michelle Grosser, like you said. I live in Miami with my family, my husband, Jeff, and my two daughters. They are 5 and 7 now. And for the better part of the last 12-ish years, I've been a trial attorney here. And at the beginning of the pandemic, like probably a lot of you listening, I finally had time, I guess, where I was forced to slow down and just really was left with no choice but to confront how deep of a burnout I was in. I had just had two babies 16 months apart. I went right back to work after having them because I was running my own law practice, and it wasn't really running without me there. So I was, nursing them while I was taking depositions, and it was just this whole thing that really wasn't healthy. But it's what I had known. And I think for so long, I was just like, go, 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 do, do, do. And I just thought that was the way that you achieve things and get stuff done. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, right at the beginning, I just started realizing how many women I knew that were also struggling. And one morning at 3 a.m., God just woke me up and he's like, you gotta help. And I was like, but
Mm.
I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Like I'm a lawyer. And as he does, he put that on my heart. And then like 3 days later, I heard this podcast about this master coach, like certification program that was going to be starting. And I spoke to my husband about it. And I'm like, man, it's a perfect timing. I'm going to do this. It was a whole year. And I was so naive. I went into it thinking, I was just going to learn like tools to help other women
Right.
because I felt like I had none. And what I did not realize was that God was sending me on just such a transformative journey for myself, right? Like the way I saw myself, the way I saw my purpose, the way I saw why I did all of the things, and my patterns and my paradigms were all just shifted kind of like a 180. And it was beautiful, but I started to realize that beneath all of the symptoms I was experiencing and all of the symptoms a lot of the women I was talking to were experiencing was a dysregulated nervous system. That was like the common theme through everything. And it's really the foundation for so much of how we think and how we show up and the things that we say and the things that we do. So I kind of just took a deep dive and studied everything I could about the nervous system. I got certified as a neurological fitness coach, and since then, so for the past, I guess, 4-ish years, I've been helping women, high achieving women, learn how to harness the power of a regulated nervous system. What does that mean? What does it change? I think it changes everything,
Yeah.
and how it can help us so much.
Oh, I love that. And I can relate to so many pieces of your story. I feel like, instead of BC and AD, so many of us now, our time system is based on pre-COVID, post-COVID, like during COVID.
Yes.
And the high achieving women and burnout. And, our purpose so often comes through our own struggles and then um basically finding our own freedoms and then wanting so badly to share that with other people that we see struggling. So tell me a little bit more about what it means to have a regulated versus dysregulated nervous system. So maybe let's start with, what does a regulated nervous system look like?
Yeah, so that's really good. So when we talk about having a regulated or a dysregulated nervous system, what we mean is not that you're calm all the time, right? Not that
Yeah.
you're like always even keel. But when we talk about having a regulated nervous system, it means that we have a nervous system that is resilient. It's a nervous system that's flexible. So that means that when we encounter some sort of stressor, right? Or some sort of like something that spurs us into action that we have to respond to, that our nervous system can adjust and it can release certain hormones that we need, like cortisol and adrenaline, so that we can show up and respond in a way that's appropriate for the situation. But then our nervous system is able to come back down to baseline stress level, to that place where we're not experiencing a surge in all those hormones, where we're not stuck in a fight or flight response, and we're back to being regulated. So we can experience the ups and downs of life, but we don't get stuck in either the ups or the downs. We can
Yeah.
always come back to baseline when that threat has passed or that stressor has passed. But now, right, as high, especially as high achieving women, moms, all of the things that we're managing in the 21st century, just the pace with which we live, most of us are experiencing chronic stress,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's, work, whether it's just the constant notifications coming from our phone and our emails, what our kids need from us, our partners, our home, everything. It's just like, health issues, financial issues. It's constant for so many of us. And so what happens is that our body never has that opportunity to return to baseline stress level because it's just chronic stress, stressor
Right.
after stressor. So we get stuck. We get stuck in that fight or flight mode. We get stuck in a very disconnected, burnt out mode. And we don't have the tools to help our body understand that it's safe to come back to baseline. So when we're stuck in fight or flight, that kind of activated energy, or when we're stuck in this feeling of just burnout and exhaustion, that's what we refer to as having a nervous system that's dysregulated. stuck there, and we don't have the tools to bring it back to baseline, back to where we feel present and calm and connected to other people. And that really impacts everything.
So what are some common or maybe even surprising symptoms of being in a dysregulated nervous system?
Yeah, so it really it shows up in so many different ways. I usually categorize the symptoms as mental symptoms, emotional symptoms, and even physical symptoms.
Mhm.
So on the mental and emotional side, it can show up as chronic tiredness and exhaustion. It can
Mhm.
show up as brain fog or forgetfulness, right? We feel like we just can't think clearly, or we open the fridge and we're like, man, what was I what was I even getting in here?
Right.
It can show up as anxiety. It can show up as irritability and feeling edgy. It can show up as um, like having low self-confidence. It can show up in having poor boundaries or being a people pleaser. It
Mhm.
can show up in having a sense of low self-worth. It can show up in, I mean, there's so many different ways it can show up mentally and emotionally. And then on the physical side, what happens when we experience chronic stress is that our body will always prioritize our safety and survival. So
Right.
when our body is experiencing a real threat, or even just a perceived threat, right? It's like, it's just an email from your boss, Michelle. It's not like you're not going
Right.
to die. Okay. But my body doesn't know that, right? My heart starts racing and my hands get clammy and I just get so mad or whatever it is. There's a response, and our body will go into this survival mode. And certain things happen on a physiological level when that stress response is initiated. So, because our body is prioritizing survival, blood is actually diverted away from our gut and digestion because, if we're trying to run from a lion or whatever
Right.
it was, digestion is not the priority at the moment. And the same thing with, our reproductive system is not a priority at the moment. Our immune system is not a priority at the moment if we're trying to survive. So all of those non-essential systems get paused. They kind
Right.
of get put on the back burner when we're stuck in this fight or flight state. And we notice that people will show up if they've been living in chronic states of dysregulation with all of these physical symptoms showing up. So it might look like gut issues and IBS and digestive, complications and issues. It might look like insomnia, trouble falling asleep and staying asleep. It might look like if you experience headaches or migraines. Autoimmune conditions are often rooted in nervous system dysregulation.
Mhm.
Muscle tension, achy muscles, achy joints. If you are someone who has like clenches their jaw,
Yeah.
even now if you're listening and like your tongue is pressed up against the roof of your mouth and your jaw feels tight, those are physical symptoms that your nervous system is bracing. Your nervous system is in fight or flight. Neck pain, shoulder pain, those kinds of things that we've all experienced at one point or another, but it's really a manifestation of our body bracing for some sort of threat. And then over time, that just shows up as aches and pains.
That resonates so much with me, and I'm sure with my listeners, because really this show is geared toward high functioning, high achieving, often people pleasing, approval seeking professional women. And those patterns are so, well, they're just so, we're so patterned that way
Yes.
from however we ended up responding to our environment, whatever. That's our pattern of being in the world. So what are some practical healthy habits, some things that we can implement to start to have a more fit nervous system or bring our nervous system back into regulation?
Yeah. Okay. So I love this so much because I think a huge part of it is really reassessing how we're going about our day-to-day lives. And that's taking a long, hard look at some of those patterns, right? So many of which we probably are not even aware of, or we're just starting to grow in awareness of. And I always say that awareness precedes choice. Like awareness always has to be the first thing. And then when we're like, oh my gosh, I do that. Like I'm always busy. I don't know how to take a break. It's so uncomfortable for me to slow down, right? I do
Right.
people please. I do whatever it is. Um, Take a look at it. You have the awareness, and now you can do something about it. And something that I think that's important there, and this is just kind of, mindset stuff around it. And then I can give you guys some practical tools about actually regulating your nervous system. The mindset piece is once you have that awareness, it is such a beautiful invitation to explore with curiosity why you do some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of times our tendency is to be critical of ourselves or
Yeah,
judgmental, right? And it's like,
right,
oh, I don't know why I do that. Or like, man, I snapped at my kids today again, right? Or the
right.
guilt comes on, or man, I've been wanting to launch this business, but the imposter syndrome's just taking over. So when you have the awareness, instead of resorting to that kind of judgmental, critical voice, we can just be like, what's going on there, right? Just getting curious about
Get
like, why
curious.
do I do those things? When did that pattern start? What might be, some boundaries I can put around that coping mechanism because it's really all it is. It's just a
Right,
coping mechanism. Is it actually me, right? We think so many of these things about ourselves. We think they're our personality. Like for
right,
me, I just thought like high achiever, that's my personality. Type A, that's my personality. Like productive, it's my person or whatever stuff. And it's
right.
like, no, it's not, Michelle. These are just coping mechanisms that you've picked up over time because when you achieve and when you're productive and all these things, you get so much love and approval and your nervous system loves it and you keep doing it. And it's this
Yes.
whole cycle. So I think just kind of unpacking a lot of that stuff is a good place to start. On a practical level, our nervous system thrives in order. Our nervous system thrives in stillness. Those types of things feel really safe to our body, right? We don't have time to be still if we're facing some sort of threat. So when we
Right.
can practice stillness, that really sends a message to our system that it's safe, right? Safe to turn off all the alarms. It's safe to come back to baseline stress level. So I have three kind of big overarching things that I teach. These are like lifestyle things that I think are a great foundation for nervous system health. And I can walk you guys through them really quickly. The first one is moving our body every day. There's
Mm,
just no way around it, how good it is
right.
for our nervous system and all our other systems, right? And the release of the chemicals that are released when we move our bodies, and how beneficial it is to our overall health. So it doesn't have to be CrossFit. I know a lot of times when I coach high achieving women, they're high achievers and they're also high achievers in their fitness. And it's like, I'm a marathoner and I, work out 5 days a week and these really hard hit workouts and all this stuff. And what they don't realize is that that kind of exercise is actually also a stressor. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
someone who is experiencing already high levels of anxiety or dysregulation, that type of movement is actually adding additional stress to your systems. So and if you're someone who doesn't, struggle with anxiety or dysregulation, by all means, right? Go for it. But I'm just talking about gentle movement. I'm talking about going for a walk, 10-minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about, stretching or some Pilates or something like that. The next one is at least 10 minutes a day of stillness. And
Mm.
this one, especially
Yes.
us high achievers who pride ourselves on productivity, have so many stories around rest and what's lazy and what's not lazy, and what's
Mm-hmm.
productive and what's not productive that we have to unlearn and I think relearn. And it's hard. It's hard to spend 10 minutes not doing anything without feeling guilty about it. A lot of my clients really struggle, and I tell them, man, you could start with 30 seconds, right? Start with 2 minutes. And when I talk about stillness, I really just mean without any sort of stimulation to your nervous system. So, not listening to an audiobook, not listening to a podcast, not scrolling your phone, but man, just sitting in prayer for 10 minutes, right? Just sitting and listening to calm music for 10 minutes, just laying in your bed for 10 minutes before you get out in the morning and kind of going through some gratitude or some prayers. It's so powerful and anchoring into your nervous system that it's safe to be in this calm, anchored,
Yes.
present place. And then the third one, and probably my favorite, is trying to get in at least 10 minutes of play every
Mm.
single day. And I think as moms, especially, but just as adults, like we're so disconnected from the idea of play. We're like, I don't have time for play. Like, plays for kids. This is ridiculous. But man, you watch a high achieving woman start to rediscover her hobbies and her passions and the things that
Yes.
light her up. If it's baking or skateboarding or playing an instrument or painting, whatever it is, just that self-care, like just giving yourself some of that every day. That's a beautiful way to fill your cup. And play is a powerful regulator of our nervous system because it indicates safety.
Right. Even just like I think of that too, even can something as simple as learning how to just be fun and laugh. Like I was thinking
Yeah.
of that the other day with my spouse. We just our lives have been work, 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 and you get all up in your obligations and stuff. And sometimes, like, we were just laughing at something that we had seen or heard and like crying laughing. And it was so therapeutic. And I thought, gosh, when is the last time we just had
Yeah.
pure, like, pure laughter over something silly? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so beautiful because yes, and one that like stimulates this social connection, which is also
Mhm.
really regulating through our nervous system to be able to
Yeah.
laugh with people we love. And also just the way that God designed our bodies, it's incredible because we have this nerve that runs from our brainstem right down to all of our major organs. It's called
Mhm.
our vagus nerve. And that's the primary nerve that's responsible for bringing a sense of like calm and regulation to our body.
Mhm.
And if you think about where it runs, like it runs from your brainstem down kind of both sides of your neck by your ears, right? And by
Mhm.
your vocal cords and down to all your organs. And it's always sending these messages. And it can be activated by sound, by the things we say, by music. So, like when we're worshiping, when we're
Yeah.
listening to worship music, when we're laughing, when we're joyful and making a joyful sound, like we're literally wired to experience a sense of calm and peace when we do those things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Well, and even kind of the permission you just gave, even when you were talking about movement, sometimes us high achievers like to just go for a walk is somehow like not achieving enough from a working out standpoint. Like, oh, if I didn't drench myself in sweat, it just like didn't count. So I
Yep.
love that that's encouraged over sort of the grind it out sort of when it comes to a nervous system standpoint.
That's right. Yeah. And it's all about doing everything from a place of presence, right? It's not
Yeah.
like I have to grind and do this workout so hard because that's just how I do my workouts. But it's really checking in and being like, what does my body actually need today? And then I get to
Oh,
choose how I'm going to nourish my body.
yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So I've also heard you talk about, which it's funny because so often we hear either if people are not self-aware to know that they're constantly dysregulated, or they don't understand what it is like to be in a state of dysregulation. You hear the, oh, just calm down, or just talk yourself out of it, or just, you know what I mean? The just. And you talk about how our body doesn't speak a verbal language. Tell me more about that and
Yeah.
how is
Yeah.
that?
We can probably all, like you guys listening, you can probably all imagine a scenario where you're so upset about something and your husband or your kids or your coworker will be like, just chill out. It's not a big deal. And
Right.
like that, if it doesn't make you more angry, it certainly doesn't help you to calm down, right? And that's, coming from the outside, but even within, like I'll speak for myself. I've had moments where I don't know, public speaking or doing something that like pitching something or on a discovery call with a client, and I can feel that kind of anxious energy coming up because for whatever reason, right? And I'll tell myself like, Michelle, you're safe. Michelle, this is okay. You're prepared. You're going to do okay here. And my heart is still racing, right? It might have a little bit of an impact, but my hands are still clammy and my throat is still like my voice is still cracking, and all of these different things are still showing up on a physiological level in response to that stress. And that's because you're exactly right. Our body doesn't speak a verbal language. Our body doesn't speak the language of words and just telling ourselves to calm down, or telling, like, we can't really just tell our heart to stop beating so fast or tell our breath to be longer and extended, right? We have to show our body that it's safe in a way that our body understands. And we do that, again, not through words, but we do that through things like movement, things like sound, things like breath, gentle and appropriate touch. Those are all ways in which our body understands a communication that we're safe, we can get out of fight or flight, and we can calm down and come back to this regulated place where we have access to, all our mental faculties and we feel much more present.
Nice. So I'm curious. You mentioned, and part of my story is that at or near burnout kind of stage, which is a whole other level of sort of dysregulation, beyond the ups and downs and the, oh, I'm tired, or I'm exhausted, or I'm stressed,
Yeah.
that might change. Burnout is, I mean, unless you disagree, it's kind of like it can be a much deeper place and a harder to, it can feel a lot more hopeless and like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
when you actually get to a state of burnout, how how do you get from it? Do these same kind of simple principles apply when you're at that level of burnout? Or, do you have a kind of where you have to get started if you're that far into this sort of constant stress to the point of being in burnout? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So burnout, you're right. Burnout is not just like I didn't sleep well last night and I'm tired, right? Or like
yeah,
I have a kid with a flu and I was up all night. Burnout is, if you've experienced it, it can show up in a lot of different ways, but just one of the common threads is just that feeling of exhaustion. Like I wake up tired. I'm tired at 10 a.m. I'm tired at 2 p.m. I'm tired when I go to sleep. Like it's this tiredness that I just can't seem to overcome. And we just feel hopeless. Like we lose all of our passions, the things that used to get us excited. Like nothing, everything just feels like work. Hanging out with our
yeah,
friends just feels like work. Everything just, it's exhausting. We just kind of want to withdraw. We feel uninspired. Our creativity is completely zapped. And then physical manifestations of that too, right? Our skin feels dull, our hair starts falling out. We experience fluctuations in our weight. There's so many different ways that burnout shows up. So I mean, no one gets burned out overnight, right?
right.
It's like this like slow drip, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so burned out. You just have this moment. So because we don't get to a state of burnout overnight, I think the same is true in our healing journey. It's
Mhm.
really a reevaluation of how we show up and how we do everything. So I think starting with, things like stillness and movement and play are going to be super helpful. But within all of that, taking a really good hard look at your boundaries, I think is a
Yeah,
huge healing part of burnout. Like, how did I get here? Where did I not protect my energy and my time and my bandwidth? Um, am I the person who always takes on too much and has no white space on her calendar at all? Like that will lead you to burnout. So really reevaluating and making a lot of time for just margin without anything in your calendar is great for burnout. Taking a look at how you're nourishing your body, like at the most basic level. Are you giving your body the things that it needs to function properly? Are you hydrating yourself, right? Are you
right.
moving your body? And then I think a huge part of burnout also is really learning and relearning emotional hygiene. And what I mean by that is like, what are your coping strategies?
Yeah,
And how do you deal with emotions? Like so many of us, especially as high achievers, it's obviously a lot of stress, but there's a lot of frustration that comes with it, disappointment that comes with it, trying to balance, right? Work-life balance that we hear about all the time, this elusive concept that everyone seems to be after. And all of these different emotions, if we don't have the tools to learn how to process those and we just continue to suppress all of this and keep going and keep busy and keep doing, that takes up space. It takes up
mhm,
energetic space. It takes up space. It takes up space in our capacity, I think.
right.
So when we don't have tools to properly release a lot of those emotions, that can also be a huge factor in contributing to burnout. So really relearning how I go about that.
Mm, I love that. Okay, I
Yeah.
have a couple more questions. Number one, let's quick review those three, was it three or four? Those basic kind of neurological hygiene things that should be practical for most of us to incorporate into our day.
Yeah. Okay, so the three are, and I try to do at least 10 minutes each a day, and I find that that's doable. And some of them I pair up like 10 minutes of movement, go for a walk outside without your phone, right? Then you're also getting in 10 minutes of stillness, which is the second one. So
Yes,
10 minutes of movement, 10 minutes of stillness every day, and 10 minutes of play.
great. Okay, now where can people find you? And I'm going to have a quick surprise question after this one. But
Okay.
first, I don't want to forget. How can people find more of you, what you offer? What's the best place to find Michelle and all of this good stuff?
Yeah, thanks. So the best place is on my podcast, The Calm Mom. Tons of resources there. We're just at about 250 episodes. All of them, most of them, almost all of them are about tips and tools about regulating your nervous system, dealing with high functioning anxiety, recovering from burnout, taking a look at our patterns, habits, systems, all these different things around regulating your nervous system. And then my website is just my name, michellegrosser.com. And my Instagram is at michellegrosser.coach. But I don't spend too much. I try not to spend too much time there. But the podcast and the website are the best places to find me.
Wonderful. Okay. Now the surprise question. If you could tell the listeners one thing from your perspective that could change the trajectory of their life going forward, what would that kernel of wisdom be?
Ooh. I think it would be, as it relates to this, I think it would be to redefine what rest looks like for them. Because I think a lot of us think that rest is, we lay on the couch and scroll our phone at 10 p.m. for 20 minutes before we go to bed, right? Or all of these different things that we do, especially as it relates to technology that, I think it's different. If you think about your cell phone, like I can rest it on my desk and it's not charging. And I think a lot of us rest like that, right? We think we're resting, but we're not charging. And we have to be connected to a power source in order to recharge. And I think that's true for our cell phones, and that I think that's true for us as human beings also. So just asking myself, like, in this time of rest, am I actually connecting to a power source, right? Instagram is probably not a great power source. Journaling, reading your Bible, like taking a bath, going for a walk outside. I think those are beautiful power sources that will actually leave you feeling much more energized and refreshed. So I think just taking a good look at, am I actually resting or am I recharging?
Oh, I love that. So good. The cell phone analogy is great.
I did not make that up. I don't know where I heard it. I would credit them, but I agree. I love that one. It's a good reminder, a good mental picture.
Yeah, this has been so awesome, and so many things align with the messaging on this show, Michelle, and I'm so grateful that you've spent some of your very, very valuable time with us today. So thank you so very much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I pray this episode blessed you, spoke to you, or encouraged you in some way. If so, please share it with a friend and head on over to Apple Podcasts to leave me a review. That's the only way for me to know if you're enjoying the show. Nothing blesses me more than to hear from you. Also, come on over to our free Facebook community. This is a great place for us to support one another on our faith and leadership journeys. You can find the link to the group in the show notes, or go to gracefilledleader.com/community. If you have questions or content ideas for the show, please send me a message on SpeakPipe or via email. Go to gracefilledleader.com/contact and leave a written or voice recorded message. I would love to know how I can best serve you on the podcast. Now to Him who can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us. Ephesians 3, verse 20. Until next time, my friends, God bless.